Hi everyone, and welcome to the multifunction, not Polis, don't go there, multifunction garage. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. My guests today here in the Court of Public Opinion, John Scales, former senior executive with News Limited, one of the best investigative journalists in Australia, Frank Pangallo, and some very pertinent, appropriate questions for this week we will take to the streets. So let your voice be heard here in the Court of Public Opinion. Welcome to the show. Stay with us and I hope you enjoy it. It's going to be something of a media program today. As I mentioned, John Scales is here and also Frank Pangallo, a great investigative journalist. Journalism is something that you get passionate about, and you don't like people coming in and setting new rules because it suits them. But I'll say what I'm going to say in the context of recording this program for Thursday night, tonight. You know that because you're watching it. But we record it on a Tuesday. It's repeated on a Friday afternoon at 1:30 and a Saturday afternoon at 4:30. Now, the way this week is shaping up, Gillard could be rolled in the next few days. The media czar that they're planning for us, that whole piece of legislation could be scrapped. But I'm working on the basis that it's all going to happen. Now, from the one thing we learn from history is that we learn nothing from history department. It strikes me as strange. We all know how despotic or totalitarian governments work, or even governments that have their back to the wall. They want to control what is being said about them. The first thing they do is to well, I don't know if they actually shoot the editor of the newspaper, but they certainly take control of the television and the radio stations, and they do the same thing in a coup, by the way. It's the first thing they do, because if they can control, that is government, if they can control what we are hearing and what is being said about them, they're halfway there. Now, this public interest media advocate that we are being told is a benign and very good thing to have. I agree with the critics of it who say that it's a solution looking for a problem. I don't know exactly why the government would pick a fight with the media 6 months out from an election. That seems to me to be very, very strange. But I will say this. She's got the cart before the horse. If you don't like what the newspapers are writing about you, read those newspapers and become a better government. It's cause and effect. The cause of the bad publicity, which I think is behind this whole initiative, to put a control, not necessarily an obvious control, but the sort of control where you have this public interest media advocate just standing there, just watching. And you know what? Every newspaper proprietor and media proprietor and editor will make decisions through that prism. Because what he's saying is, I'm watching you, and of course you're going to behave differently. No. We need a free, vigorous press. We'll be talking about that, and we're going to take that to the street as well and see what you think about it here in the Court of Public Opinion.
Soon I'm gonna be over on the other side. Water, I just gotta be over.
One of the questions that we had for the jury last week we didn't get to, which was the animal experimentation. I mean, should we impose great cruelty on animals just for our safety and our well-being? We might also get to gun laws today. Should we strengthen them or should we relax them? We are certainly going to find out about this public interest media advocate and whether we need that. Because, you know, when we get him, we don't just get him or her, we get a whole department. Think of all the things this country needs. Do we need another department? And also, just sort of on the subject of television, do you want to see more local television? there are people who want everything to come out of Sydney or Hollywood, but you know, apart from 44 and the 44s around this country, nobody seems to be too interested. But are you? We'll find out in a little while. You know, journalists are having a field day. Some of them obviously take this sort of war on independence very seriously, and others are having an absolute ball. Coming in to Adelaide from Sydney this morning, I got the Daily Telegraph, and this is sheer, I don't know what you'd call it, it's theatre. It's great journalism. You know, they quote Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States, and the guy who wrote the Declaration of Independence, right up the top, underneath the masthead where it says, "Wherefore a free press." It's now sort of part of the corporate statement. And it says, Jefferson says, "Our liberty depends on the freedom of the press, and that cannot be limited without being lost." I think Julia Gillard was so silly to pick this fight. I've invited John Scales, former senior executive editor under the previous, before Murdoch took over the Advertiser and after Murdoch took over the Advertiser, so he's got a very good perspective on the whole thing, journalism as such, long-time journalist. How are you, John?
Good, thank you, Jeremy.
How long were you in newspapers?
I was in newspapers, I think, for 35, 37 years, with the Advertiser most of the time.
Yes.
And then in Sydney with News Limited for a year or two.
Yeah. Are we getting overly excited about this public interest media advocate, or do you see what I see and what a lot of people see as an attack on freedom of speech?
Oh, I certainly do that. I think there's been a hysterical reaction in the media to this, but that was very predictable, and I think any politician would have to have realised that that was always going to happen. I think the reaction has been extreme, certainly in the tabloids, but understandably so, because I think the threat to freedom of speech and the ability of the press to publish what it wishes within the existing laws of the land and involving defamation and so forth were there in this legislation, which I've not read specifically. I've read an awful lot about the reaction to it. But as far as I can see, the government has produced no evidence as to why it's necessary. They've given no examples as to what it seeks to suppress. One is left with only the feeling that they are doing it to try and control News Limited, because I think that's the organisation in their sights.
And then you've got what they call, or the government calls, the shock jocks, like Alan Jones and others. But, you know, surely they should look at the things that are being said and just try and sort out, well, let's not shut these people down because that's not a good look 6 months out from an election. Let's try and be a better government, and they might say some nice things about us.
Yes. Well, I think that's historically true. I mean, the Australian is the thing, I think in the paper much in their sights. That has been, and the News Limited has at large, been very persuasively against the Liberal Party in the past. And it was against Howard in his last year or two in government, which shows that they're not necessarily against the Labor government. They're necessarily against government where they perform badly. And I think for them, for the government, and many people, there are people who do support the government in this context, that they think the Australian is biased, which I happen to believe is in the eye of the beholder and always have. I think there's no evidence to show that they are biased as such. They are simply biased against bad government, and that's what they're seeking to expose.
Most journalists really sort of feel themselves to be sort of a de facto opposition anyway.
Yeah, sure.
That's sort of the job.
Yeah.
But I don't see that we've had the sort of problems that they've had in England with the hacking of the phones. We've never behaved in the journalistic class irresponsibly or recklessly, have we?
No, I agree with that, and I think Jeremy, that this all came from the English experience that gave Julia Gillard the excuse that she needed or wanted to seek to control what the perceived bias of News Limited. But you're quite right. We've not done the same excesses that the English media has gone through. I don't know of any case of hacking by an Australian journalist. Even if there had been, and had discovered, it's illegal, as it is in England. I must say, just by the way, I hear that the English British government is going to create a whole new set of sanctions against the media over there as a result of the hacking. I don't quite understand that either, quite honestly. Not that I agree with hacking, but the hacking is covered legally anyway.
Yes.
And so I don't quite see the need now to expand that to cover all other areas of media freedom.
Well, I suppose there are privacy issues, and good journalists sometimes push the envelope. I mean, if you had all sorts of controls on Bernstein and Woodward, you probably wouldn't have had Watergate.
No.
Because somebody would have rung, what was her name, Catherine Graham?
Catherine Graham.
At the Washington Post and said, hey, I mean, Nixon would have probably done it himself.
Yeah.
But I don't understand it. Some journalists sail close to the wind. Didn't somebody go through somebody's rubbish? Was it Ray Martin's rubbish? They got his rubbish and decided to do a forensic study,
yes.
which would take
I've heard that. I've heard that. I don't know anything about it.
Well, that's cheeky, but he got really angry.
Yeah. But it may be argued also in that same line of thought that the inquiries that were made in the Australian about Julia Gillard and the past that she's had with the Union and acting as a lawyer on behalf of her boyfriend, that may well come into the area of public interest and against public interest, if interpreted as such by the advocate that the government seeks to appoint.
Well, what frightens me, Dick Warburton, who was a professional businessman of great standing,
South Australian.
He said to me, I don't know how it came up, but it was in the context of an interview. And he said, well, it was in the Keating era. He said, if you do something in business, or I suggest to you in the media, that the Keating government doesn't like, you will get a tax audit. And I said, really? He said, yeah, it's one of those levers they pull. It's one of the things that they can control. And I was very skeptical about it. I about a month after that, got a tax audit. Me and my big mouth. I don't understand it. But I think
How did you respond?
I just went through it, and in fact, in the end, they were rather helpful because I had a whole lot of things very badly organised.
Right.
And they were very, very helpful. Do you think this thing is going to get up, or is going to get chucked out? And, well, I guess it'll have to get chucked out because it's pretty obvious Tony Abbott's going to win the next election, and he'll chuck it out.
Yes. From what I read, I don't think it'll succeed this time, and therefore ever, because as you say, Tony Abbott will win the next election, and if it were to succeed, he would throw it out. Presumably he could, given that the Greens would support it in this legislation in the Senate, and that's only presuming that he can do that in the Senate as well. Yeah. But I'm not like you. I think the whole thing is extraordinarily puzzling, both in its timing and its design. To try and push this through in a week or two. Yeah,
crazy. You wouldn't even be able to read the 6 bills.
You would not be able to
in a week.
And to make people understand it.
Final question: when you get up in the morning and you get your Advertiser or your Weekend, your Australian, and you read it as a journalist, do you tear your hair out and say, "My God, I'd do this differently. How dare they do that?"
No, I've given up doing that.
You're sanguine.
Sanguine.
John Scales, thank you so much for joining us.
Not at all, Jeremy. Thank you.
The Court of Public Opinion. Hope you're enjoying the show, The Court of Public Opinion. They sent me this to show you because, well, they know this is a garage and a television program in a garage, which is pretty eccentric. So this guy, Jim Sonter, went around and he did a book on garages. But I don't mean garages, personal neighbourhood garages. I mean servos of a character nature. So if you have any interest in seeing how the years have changed the garage industry and the people who used to, you know, they used to call them service stations because somebody came out and gave you service. You remember that? Anyway, let me introduce you to the jury. Coralie, Cheney.
Hi, Jeremy.
Welcome. Scott McBain.
Nice to be back.
Now, I'm not sure what surname am I going to give you, because I know you're a spy and I have to be very, very careful, Karen.
Stevens.
Stevens.
A real life spy.
Well, she has
Cool.
a couple of pseudonyms.
Oh, I like that.
Say no more. Welcome to you all. You know, we were talking about the ridiculous things that people take to court, and sometimes win extraordinary amounts of money, like the public servant that was frightened of some fluffy thing that she thought was a male appendage, and she sued, went on sick leave forever.
Wow,
Then there
fluffy
was
nose, hey?
well, anything. It defended her, and she won the case. Public servants have been paid workers' compensation for dirty looks, $251,000 for mental stress because somebody looked over the office petition and gave somebody a dirty look. But this, I've got the Bobby Dazzler here for you.
They get better than that.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Australia's Disability Commissioner, Graham Innes, who is blind, has won a discrimination case, and who better to fight it? I mean, he's obviously knows what he's doing. A discrimination case against New South Wales rail authorities for not providing, you ready? Audible train announcements. Is there such a thing?
It's hilarious because, I mean, all audible train announcements that I've ever heard have been inaudible, except for the ones that I used to make
You're kidding.
at the Narracourt railway station. I used to work for the railways way back. It was just after steam finished. I'm only kidding. It's a lot younger than that.
With a microphone, you were telling people about the train?
Yes, the train from Mount Gambier is about to arrive.
Oh, you wouldn't have done it like that. You'd have.
Oh,
you'd
I
have
can't remember. It was a long time
it would have
ago.
been really
I used
entertaining.
to put my hand behind my ear.
Of course.
Yeah.
But
As you would.
It was hilarious. Half of Narracourt could hear it.
Exactly.
Well, you know, I was in Sydney on the trains up there, and Grant Goldman, who used to be here in
Goldie,
Adelaide, and he's
yes.
now at 2SM in Sydney, he does them all, and you hear this wonderful bass baritone voice, but he's in the train.
Oh. Well, actually, on the train.
No, he's not in
I
the
was going to say,
train.
I want that.
No, it's a recording.
I want to do it live
And he
on
says,
every train.
Stand back from the doors. They are closing, and this train is moving. It's grand.
I can see a new career for you.
But the guy, obviously, who does the announcements on the platforms.
But that'll be pre-recorded.
Yeah,
And
well,
they'd
no.
Be yeah.
What did you call it? Conductor speak. So if you understand, if you travel on trains a lot,
Right.
you tune your ear to a kind of, it's Greek and Turkish and Italian and Scottish and all sorts of things, and you get to understand it.
I just think if this man was blind, was he also partially deaf?
I don't know. It doesn't say so. But the Rail Corp has been ordered to pay him $10,000 because he complained it was discriminating, that's Rail Corp, discriminating against visually impaired people because nobody could possibly understand what was being said. Of course, he's right.
Well, I think they're clear. I've never had a problem hearing train announcements.
I hear the train.
Mind the gap. Yeah.
Really? I must have missed that one.
Anyway, look, I just thought I'd throw that into the mix.
Beautiful.
Questions in the court of public opinion. Now, do you think we need this local public advocate media consultant, czar, bully boy? I don't know how it's going to turn out, but, you know, obviously Julia's been getting some offensive, bad articles, and she thinks the whole thing needs to be watched over, the shock jocks and the newspaper editors and the television shows. This is interesting. Here's what you think.
No, it's an invasion of free speech, and we are still a democracy. We're not a communist country. We don't need a government that controls the media. There are serious problems with the control of the media, but that can be addressed through the ACCC and other means. No, I'm certainly not in favour of it. It's a huge mistake by the Gillard government. They have a habit of shooting themselves in the foot.
I don't think it's necessary. I think all the necessary checks and balances are in the industry now. So I think an added layer of bureaucracy and control, no, I don't think we need it at all.
I certainly don't. I think that the press is entitled to its freedom, and it's up to people whether they accept those opinions or not.
Well, I think there needs to be a spokesperson for the way the general populace feels about a number of different issues, and I think if you don't have a voice designated for that, it's almost lost in the ether because different people have different opinions. But if you've got a large group of people with a strong opinion about something and they can put it forward to the media advocate, I think that would be a very useful and positive addition to our society, really.
Yes, I do. So we can know the truth of what's going on in the world rather than what the government wants to tell us.
No.
And why is that?
Because I'm quite happy with the media as it is. My son he's a journalist, so yes, no, quite happy at the moment. I don't think we need one.
Well, what do you think? A public interest media advocate. Coralie?
I think if the media is muzzled, so to speak, in any way, it's completely inappropriate. And the whole point to the media would be that you get, a good balanced side of the story. And if that happens, the media will soon die. It shouldn't be allowed.
Well, we get unbalanced stories all the time. We get it in the press, but I mean...
But you sort it out, don't you? You as a reader sort it out.
I mean, where are you going to find somebody that's completely impartial, or who, what's more, is actually given the powers by the government of the day to be impartial? That's always going to be the issue.
Well, the newspapers in China and North Korea, I'm sure, are very impartial.
So, I mean, the minute we want to get rid of, what we've got and bring communism into Australia, well, we can.
That's right.
We can have that. I think it's great. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want the subject to dominate. It has dominated this show, but I think it's the major issue of the entire week. Karen?
Ministry of Truth, that's all I think.
Ministry of Truth.
1984, George Orwell's book, Ministry of Truth, where does it end? And talking about an impartial person, Scott, it's impossible.
It's not going to happen.
There's no such thing. Human behaviour dictates we cannot be impartial. It's impossible. So who would watch the watchdog? I just think it just rings alarm bells for me all over the place.
But in the media, if you haven't offended somebody, and perhaps more desirably everybody, you're not doing your job.
Absolutely.
Shock tactics.
No, I don't think. I think if you're grey, you shouldn't be on the air. And I'm not talking about the colour of your hair either, by the way. It's like
you can't. I
mean, by virtue of the fact that everyone has an opinion, you are not going to agree with everybody. And I mean, you and I know it through our media careers over the years. That's happened, and it doesn't matter what stance you take on something.
But you need that balanced opinion, like the two sides.
If
someone, either government or the person that owns the media or whatever, is taking control of that.
But people are lazy. Talking about presenting both sides, people don't want that. People just want the easiest option, the answer to be presented to them. They want to believe, they want to be told, which is why it's important that we don't muzzle the media, as you were saying, that it is important. We do have access to a range of different opinions.
Well, I think Voltaire said it best, and that is, I disagree with what you say, but I will fight to the death for your right to say it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sums it up.
Here.
Now, animal experimentation, which we didn't get to last week, I mean, the terrible things they do to animals, companion animals, in the name of our comfort and our safety and our health. Karen, got an opinion?
Emotive topic. Emotive, and I love animals. I've done some work for the RSPCA. I've certainly worked volunteering in raising funds and things like that. However, animal experimentation has been pinnacle to medical advances, and we have to accept that. I mean, that's not an opinion; that's a fact.
But you're in psychology. I don't know about research science, but surely we can do a computer modelling.
Yeah, and they're looking at doing that at the moment. So that's certainly an area of research that they're investigating. And they're also looking at growing cells, so human cells and animal cells at the moment, onto which you can test various substances. At this stage, it's not really refined enough to be able to test it empirically. However, you can certainly get initial toxicology indications as to whether or not you can take it to the next stage and whether it, you know, it is going to definitely be detrimental to animals. So you can certainly take to the next step. My line would be in regards to cosmetics. I don't think there should be any animal testing on cosmetics at all. I think that should have human volunteers, if anything.
And I think there's a lot of countries getting on board. The EU only last week got on board banning the use of animal testing for personal care products, and I don't have an issue with that at all. Mind you, I don't wear makeup. Some would say that I probably need to, but and the EU. This comes off the back of India did it in January of this year. There's a couple of major offenders with massive population bases that we probably need to look at. China is obviously one of those offenders. It's no secret that they do a lot of animal testing. But as far as the medical side of it, I mean, see, I'm a big fan of stem cell research because I think that that's the way forward. But there's a growing trend against that, and you know, are we playing with God's work, or it's a
well, Coralie is quite close to God, so she would know.
Well, she's sitting closer to me than you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I personally don't have a problem with it. Many years ago, I worked down at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in the research department down there, and they used a lot of, you know, animals, pigs and sheep, things like that, to be able to do testing. They have the utmost care for them and consideration for them. In fact, they're very, very well cared for. And it's a very important part of our medical research. And if you look over the hundreds of years of where we've come in medical research and where we would be, you know, medicines and pharmaceutical things, they have to be tested. And would you want to put your hand up to test an unknown drug with not having it tested some other way? And until such time
but we don't know that these things are bad. We're just checking. So why not say, you know, we've got all these prisons all over the place. They don't take this the wrong way. And you say to these guys, look, you're in here for life. How about you help us with this? Now, it could have a nasty outcome, or it could be just fine and you get out. Gee, if I was in the Slammer for life, I'd grab the offer.
Well, if they could come with, you know, peaches and cream complexion as they come out of jail, because they could do all the.
That adds a whole nother dimension to the jail thing. I don't think we want to go there, quite frankly. But
now, this is what you think of that subject.
Look, I'm a great lover of animals, and no, I don't. How we test for the safety of humans on new products, I'm not quite sure. But in principle, no, I'm against it.
Well, ethically, it just doesn't feel comfortable, really. I think, again, ethically, it just doesn't fit for me. So, no, I don't think it's necessary, personally.
I have to say I'm not a fan of. As a scientist, we did use animals in histology and pharmacology, but that was for the purpose of testing pharmaceutical products. So now I'm not making excuses here, but I think that's a far more significant area than the aesthetic beauty industry, and I think there could be far better ways of using natural products rather than needing to test animals for that. Whereas I think pharmaceuticals, which can help manage conditions like diabetes and heart disease, etc., which need to be properly pharmaceutically tested, are a far more appropriate way to use animals per se, who are designated for that.
Not for the sake of beauty products, I don't. I think as far as medical procedures and things like that, I think that's perhaps a necessity, but certainly not for beauty products.
No, I don't. I used to work in that sort of industry and I don't believe it at all. It's very, very cruel. There's other methods that can be used these days rather than using animals.
Oh, no, we're very much against that.
Any animals that are abused or treated badly, no.
Or overseas live export, no.
We're part of Animals Australia, so so you won't get an argument there.
No. I think we've got to look after animals pretty carefully because they are a part of our wildlife, and you got to treat animals a bit like human beings a bit. But then again, we do need skin product. We need products for our health too. So it's a hard decision to make, really. Yeah, I see the benefit on both sides.
No, definitely not. No. As you can see, I don't wear a lot of makeup, so I definitely don't believe in using animals for testing. No. Not a good idea.
No, I definitely do not. I'm a big animal lover. I've loved animals since I was a kid, and there's no point. They're not humans. They don't get made up. Makeup's for humans. Tested on us.
Okay. Now, do we need more local television? Do you want to see more local television? Because I just get the feeling that everything is going to eventually be taken away from Adelaide and Tasmania and Western Australia. Everything's going to come out of Sydney. Now, unless we put our foot down and make sure that we have local production, there won't be any. There won't be any jobs, and there won't be anything really all that interesting for us to look at. What do you think?
Well, Scotty and I, many years ago, Scott.
Hey, easy on the many.
We were working at Channel 9 when it was owned, of course, by John Lamb, and it was a wonderful family environment, and we did a local program which was terrific for businesses and for local content about what was happening around town.
Yes.
I think it was a great show, personally, a bit biased. But I also understand that when they were taken over by Win, viably, it was more economical for them to put on a I Dream of Jeannie program and to run that than to do the local content. So from a business perspective, it probably wasn't worth doing it.
But it's not a business. I mean, having a license. Yes, I know. But if that particular business is unique with all sorts of responsibilities, because you've got a responsibility to your shareholders. You also have a responsibility to your community. Now, why should we be a branch office? Why shouldn't we have local people who, sure, Oprah Winfrey started out in a little country television station and she got to New York. But I'll guarantee you that that little country television station is still employing local people and still doing good television.
300 million as opposed to 20 million. I guess that's an economy of scale is the problem. And I guess with the diversification of the electronic media, that's probably caused part of the problem as well. I mean, it's such a widespread these days.
Well, in the Riverland, and I guess this is happening all over provincial or regional Australia, they've decided that putting on a local news is just not on. We'll take it from Sydney, or we'll take it from Adelaide.
Yeah, Win made that directive 2 weeks ago. That's across all of their regional stations in this state, at least, that I know of. So. Look, I love live. To me, the greatest thrill of all time is doing live TV, and it doesn't happen anymore. Graham Kennedy started out, and I certainly don't put myself in the same sentence, let alone paragraph, as Graham Kennedy. But there is nothing better than live TV, and it's just the ultimate in flying by the seat of your pants, having nowhere to run. Because when something goes wrong, radio we can hide our faces. When something goes wrong on live TV,
and it did, and we did have lots of fun.
Yeah, but that's the way. That's the way you learn. What do you think, Cal?
Yeah. I wonder if perhaps the reluctance comes from the current situation that the big stations are struggling, a financial situation they're struggling in. Maybe that, and it's cheaper to buy things, as you're saying. I Dream of Jenny overseas.
Yes,
it comes down.
But why don't we have theatrical people or producers or people who have show business in their blood, rather than what I suspect is a whole bunch of accountants running the show? Or hedge fund
operators. It's all about money. That's the bottom line, and we have too many options.
Here's what you think.
But I think it would be very nice to see in terms of embracing Adelaide, and that would be good.
I would very much appreciate it, yes, and not that my daughter and I get much time to see TV, but I think it would be a good way to advertise South Australia. Because we have a number of friends and we're into some specific music from overseas, and everyone seems to see Sydney as the place for Adelaide, and we'd really like to see more on Adelaide. So I assume that's what the local content would involve. Yeah, and some more music programs too would be really nice too.
I suppose yes.
I had never thought about it. I suppose we don't watch television that much. Maybe if there was something more relevant on TV, we would. Who knows?
Summer days and summer breezes, flowers everywhere, are all that I remember.
Thanks for being with us, and remember, this is the show that shoots the breeze, never the messenger, unlike the government. So I think it's probably what all this nonsense with the media is about. The Automobile Club of Australia was formed in Sydney on this day in 1903, which must have been about the time that the first motor car rolled off what passed for an assembly line back in those days. They added the Royal to that in 1930, but this is a garage, so we should mark that day. John Laws was stricken with polio and paralysed along his right side and leg and arm. That was in 1962. And I was listening to him in Sydney the other day, and he still sounds, I don't know how old he is, but he still sounds very good. John Laws would remember the day maybe, or would try to forget it perhaps. Chips Rafferty was born. Dick Smith got married, the electronic whiz, or the electronic Dick. Peter Yarra went to jail, and I won't go into exactly why he went to jail, but he might remember the day. The Australian radio legend Andrea Dorothy Jenner died at the age of 95. She went to Hollywood in the 1920s. She went there to be an actress as a teenager. She starred in those early silent movies that Max Sennett made with these beautiful women. They were called the Max Sennett Bathing Beauties. You're probably not old enough to remember that. And she went on to become the first female war correspondent in World War II and a great broadcaster at 2GB, where I met her. Quite eccentric, which is probably why I like her. The Salvation Army newspaper War Cry was first published in Sydney in 1883. Bob Hawke was elected Prime Minister for a fourth and final term. And in 1944, alarm clocks went on sale in Chicago for the first time since the beginning of World War II. About 2,500 people trampled security guards and store workers in their rush to buy one of the first alarm clocks. How did people wake up before 1944? Maybe we didn't. Now, one of the finest investigative journalists in this country is Frank Pangallo, and I've known him for years. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeremy. Good to be with you.
Or the garage.
And the garage. I love the garage. It's fabulous.
Well, they haven't locked me up yet, in the padded cell, I mean. Now, your career is amazing because you've managed to do all sorts of diverse things. Newspaper editor, journalist. We worked together on radio. You were my producer.
Magazines.
Television. Yep.
Yeah, the whole
What have you
gamut.
enjoyed most?
Television, I have to say. I've enjoyed television the most, simply because it's such an exciting medium to work in. You've got the visual aspect of it, and also being able to weave stories in that visual medium is, I really enjoy it, trying to, because when you see pictures as well as the talent, it creates that emotion, that reaction from your audience, whereas newspapers, of course, is just the black and white, and it's perhaps you don't get the instant reaction that we would get from television, so it's fantastic. But I enjoy my period in newspapers. I love it, and that's my grounding is newspapers, and I particularly enjoyed my period at the now defunct News Afternoon Daily.
Yes, I've got a few, what do they call them, hoardings or posters.
Fabulous.
And I've got them framed, and I got them on the wall over there because they're kind of like the punctuation marks in your life.
They are.
Yeah, there are moments when you don't actually want to get in the paper. But you know the definition of a bad day, don't you?
Yes, tell me.
Well, it's when you look out the window and you see Frank Pangallo coming up the drive with a camera.
Well, those days may soon be over, Jeremy, because they're trying to stop us from doing that.
But that is just a hopeless overreaction, isn't it?
It is. And look, the overreaction to what the media does in this country, look, it just totally astounds me. of particularly what's happening at the moment. And I think the thing that kick-started all this was a few months ago with the Leveson inquiry in the UK.
Yes.
And suddenly, the Prime Minister and others within the Labor Party seemed to think that there was a problem with the Australian media. So it was time to sink the boots into them. Now, if you look back through our history, and it's a rich history of Australian media, particularly with newspapers, I can't think of any of the scandals that have happened in this country that have totally enveloped the UK. We haven't had phone hacking issues. We haven't had, gross invasions of privacy like they've done over there.
But we have had exposés which make a lot of people feel uncomfortable. A lot of stuff has had a strong light shone on it because of good journalism.
Absolutely.
And good journalists.
And that's what I fear about this legislation, Jeremy, that it will actually stifle good investigative journalism. And we've seen that over the years, and particularly in the News Limited press. I'll single one journalist out who is a fantastic investigative reporter, Hedley Thomas. And, the sort of stories that Hedley manages to dig out involves contacts within government, material that is either leaked to him or to other journalists. That stuff will stop. And of course, you then have a so-called public media interest advocate who's going to decide whether this matter is in the public interest. Now, there are certainly some stories that may not be in the public interest, but of course you're going to have...
But people don't have to read it.
Exactly. It's exactly right. You don't have to read it. And the other thing is with public interest, well, who defines what public interest is? Can you tell me what...
Because the public is a collective noun for individuals. What I find interesting, somebody else is not going to find interesting. What I find pornographic or rude or insulting, somebody else mightn't find. But that's the interesting thing about the individualism of our society. You can't have some grey, he may be omnipotent, but some grey czar of the media, the arbiter of public taste and the arbiter of what is good for me to read.
Well, who would that be?
It's a joke.
I've been scratching my head to think, who would this czar be? Who would this arbiter be?
Who would they get?
Where would they get him from? Or her, exactly. Would it be somebody from, out of the media, somebody who'd had a long association with the media?
And would we be allowed to scrutinise that person?
Exactly, would we? Would it be somebody from the legal profession? Who knows who it is? The government is going to appoint them, Jeremy.
But the government will appoint, and the government already appoints judges and all sorts of people to head all sorts of departments. The government of either persuasion would appoint a like-minded person, surely.
Absolutely.
That's a bee. So
it could be a spy. It's a big blowfly.
Maybe one of those sort of planes that they've got.
It could be, yes. It's got
a
a hidden camera in it that's spying on us. The fly on the wall, actually.
What are you working on at the moment?
At the moment, look,
Come on, you can tell me.
I can. No, I've been filming a series for the last year and a half involving a real estate agent. It's actually been a reality series called Haley's Law. And believe it or not, we originally set out to investigate the actions of this particular real estate agent because we'd had complaints about her. But anyway, when I got to know her, I found her quite unique. She's quite a unique talent. Her name is Hayley Marley Duncan, and she's a property manager in the northern suburbs out of Gawler. She manages about 400 properties, and she's very unorthodox in the way she handles bad tenants. And I think what it is about her that people don't like, particularly in government and bureaucracy, is that Hayley likes to swear, Jeremy.
Sometimes it's a relief, isn't it?
It is. And she swears like a trooper. And, I don't think people like women who swear. Particularly in government, I've found. And anyway, look, I've followed all the way through with various tenants. We've been to the Residential Tenancies Tribunal. We've been kicked out of the Residential Tenancies Tribunal. She's had issues with rival agents. Police have arrested her. I just couldn't believe that almost daily there's a drama in this woman's life. It's a great reality show. So I've spent 14 months filming her.
Yeah, because your genre of television that you're doing now, of course, is terribly time-consuming. But just quickly, best and worst moment. Best and worst story, best and worst...
Best moment?
Best and worst story.
Look, the worst... I think the worst moment for me was getting done over for doing over a used car salesman. Now when a journalist loses out to a used car salesman, that is, you know... So,
did you get it on film?
Well, we ran a story, but anyway, I can actually say though that after that I actually met up with that person. And we had a good chat over it, and we almost, we shook hands, and we've become friends. And it was something I actually regretted doing, and I think he understood that. The best moments, I think, look, the best moments would be, strangely enough, was a celebrity interview. Was meeting and interviewing George Harrison, and it took me, of the Beatles, and it took me all day waiting in the foyer of the Hilton Hotel after everybody had told me he had left, although I knew he was there, simply because I met George at the Grand Prix the previous weekend, and he agreed to do an interview with me.
Great.
And he was quite friendly. We had lunch together, and anyway, he was there, and I waited for him, and no one came down to get me, so I managed to use my intuition about finding his room and went to the 18th floor of the Hilton Hotel, and I didn't know what room he was in, and I saw a maid that was walking down the hallway, and I said, "Oh, look, I'm lost," and I was wearing my suit. Mr. Harrison's room? And she said, "Oh, yeah, there it is in the corner." So I went there, knocked on the door, and of course George opens it, and he was wearing a bathrobe. And he was bleary-eyed because he had a long night, but he remembered, and he said, "I'll wait." He said, "Wait for me downstairs, I'll be down there in half an hour," and he did, and it was a terrific interview. I had, over half an hour with him, and you always wish you could have more with those people. But I really enjoyed that one. And one I did last year on the olive oil industry, because I spent a lot of time investigating what was going on in the olive oil industry, that there was it's a massive racket worldwide of
extra virgin and God knows what you're getting.
Yes, not only that, and there's the contamination of these olive oils, and you're talking about a multi-million-dollar racket that involves, the mafia and other, criminal types.
Cement shoes, be careful.
Exactly, you've got to be careful. But here in South Australia, we uncovered a local grower who was contaminating the oil with imported stuff, and we only got it at the tail end, but we still were able to investigate it. And look, it's led to the government starting to impose standards on olive oil, what constitutes extra virgin olive oil. The supermarkets are now deciding to crack down on it. So that's the stories I like doing, Jeremy, is the ones where you get good results.
Yep. From Today Tonight, that's the local Channel 7 program. And you know how we like local programming, local production on this program.
Well, we always enjoy having you on there, Jeremy, as well.
Well, you've always been kind to me.
Well, we always enjoy having you on there, particularly when we do our grumps.
Grumpy old man, that's true enough. Great to see you.
We find you quite incisive, and your opinions, look, we value your opinions, and we thank you for being on our show.
Well, we value your program.
Thank you very much.
And your talent.
Thank you.
Now, coming up, we'll have a pet of the week, and you might be able to give, I'm not sure that it's a puppy dog or a pussycat, but you might be able to give that well-deserving animal a home. And Betty will be here with what's happening around Adelaide in the entertainment world. This is the Court of Public Opinion.
I love you.
Now, for some reason, on my telephone, I can't open the Animal Welfare League Pet of the Week. Won't work. So we might have to do 2 next week, something like that. If you're having a birthday, a couple more anniversaries, do you know who Jack Craig Gardner was? Well, he died in Queensland on this day in '73. Best remembered for playing Green Bottle in Australian radio, masterpiece, called Yes What, which was recorded here in Adelaide and went all over the whole country in the 1930s. A great success story of radio. Also, Mike Todd died in an air crash. President Bush announced that he had banned broccoli from the presidential flights and the White House. Wonder what broccoli? Why? You just didn't like broccoli, I suppose. Well, if you're the President of the United States, you don't have to eat your vegetables, do you? You don't. And one other thing, this is the week, not quite the day, but every year at the same time of the day, the Swallows return to Capistrano in California. How they do it, why they do it, nobody knows. The old mission at San Juan in Capistrano. It's been going on since 1776, and they never fail to show up. Now, Betty's with us. I saw you the other night doing your wonderful routine.
Thank you. And I saw you on Q&A the other night doing your wonderful routine, but we'll get back to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I was a bit nervous about it because I only know how to do my own thing. And when you're with a whole bunch of other people, you don't know whether to jump in or you wait till somebody says, do you want to comment or to point at you, or I don't know. But anyway, it was an interesting experience and they were very kind to me.
You'll be doing more?
I don't know.
Oh, of course.
I'm available. I'm available. Now, the Rubies...
The Rubies are great.
The Rubies are wonderful. I love the music that you do. It's fantastic.
I love the music too. This is why I put the group together in the first place.
Yeah.
I love 60s music, love Petula Clark, love the Shangri-Las, love Dusty Springfield, and we had a great time on Saturday night.
It's like all the cars in this garage. It's part of an era, which was a good one. Listen, Simon and Garfunkel, do you know what Simon and Garfunkel... do you know what they were called before they were called Simon and Garfunkel? No. You'd never guess.
Do tell.
I know you're interested in show business and music, so I'll tell you. They were called Tom and Jerry.
Tom and Jerry?
Tom and Jerry. Their first single was called Hey, Schoolgirl. That didn't get you into trouble. Anyway, 1958, they recorded that song, but became Simon and Garfunkel afterwards.
Fabulous.
I just thought I'd throw it into the mix.
You are full of information and I love it. Now, speaking about your cars, do you think I could actually bring the Rubies here? Could we do a photo shoot in here?
Yes, of course you can.
Do you mind?
But I'd love you to come and do a few songs.
Well, we can do that.
Well, we can.
Anything is possible. Okay, let's talk about who's touring.
Who's
Bruce
touring?
Springsteen is touring Australia at the moment, and he is apparently amazing. He's still got it. Believe it or not, here's some trivia for you. He must love March because he's always in Australia in March. Now, he was here in, 2003. He kicked off in Melbourne, right, on the 20th of March, right? In 1985, a concert I went to, believe it or not, kicked off in Sydney, 21st of March. And now he's in Sydney tomorrow night. He already performed Sydney a couple of nights ago. Then he's off to Melbourne for 3 shows next week at Rod Laver Arena. Then the next weekend at Hanging Rock at Woodend.
I wonder if Treasurer Swan will be in the
I don't know.
audience. Have you heard him do Pay Me My Money Down?
No.
Oh, that's a great song. Sea shanty kind of a song, but wonderful.
Do you think I would sort of love that stuff?
I think so.
Yeah, oh good, as long as I'd love it. Okay, now Santana, he is touring with the Steve Miller Band. Do you know that 90 million records he's sold?
90 million.
He's won 10 Grammys. And he's on the Rolling Stone magazine's list of top 15 guitarists of all time. How good's that? So he's in town. He's here.
Living legend.
He is a living legend. He's here tomorrow night in Adelaide, which is fabulous, and then he's going to Melbourne, Sydney, and then Brisbane. Or he played Melbourne, that's right, yeah. Got to get my facts right as a reporter, don't I? So that's Steve Miller Band, and any information on the Chug Entertainment website.
Yes.
Now, do you remember what you were doing in the summer of '69?
I was working at 2KY, and as I said the other night on Q&A, being told what to say and what I couldn't say politically.
Really?
I do remember the year, yes.
Right. I think this is a year that Bryan Adams will also remember, because that's when he bought his first real 6-string, and he played it.
Did you say 6 string?
6.
Oh, 6 string.
He played it until his fingers bled, and they were the best days of his life. So he is touring. Do you like Bryan Adams?
Yes, I do. He sang the song in Robin Hood, didn't he?
That's right. Everything I do it for you.
Everything I do
it for you. Yep. He's performing in Wollongong, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, Newcastle, Frontier Touring. Website for information on that. And of course the Seekers, your favourite.
I love them.
I know you do. Touring in May, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, Sydney and Melbourne.
We got to go. Thank you, Betty.
You're welcome.
Have a great week, everyone. Thank you so much for your company. Put some water out for the birds if the weather gets hot. Have a great week. The Court of Public Opinion is my registered trademark. Believe in yourself. Bye for now.